morning all. We're going to be talking about modernization, sustainability, technology disruption, and most importantly for all of you guys, how talent is at the core of it. As you've already heard in the introductions, I have a fantastic power panel who I have the privilege of moderating. Thank you all for joining us today, folks. And we're going to be really touching upon some key themes, which, as Piyush said in his opening remarks as well, really are defining the future for us, not just from a business perspective, but also as societies, as individuals, and so on, right? So we're going to start the conversation with, what modernization means for all of us and how it has a symbiotic relationship with sustainability, right? We're going to then move on to a very, very exciting topic as well, which again builds on this whole notion, which is the notion of the multiverse, right? Many of you would have read about the metaverse, blockchain technologies coming through. One of the key challenges of blockchain is how much energy it consumes, right? And the tech industry is doing a bit about it. But equally, as business leaders, we have to wrestle with how do we get the physical and the virtual worlds to coexist so that customer experience becomes seamless, customer delight becomes the norm. So we're going to be talking a lot about those themes rather than just the tech bit of it. And finally, I'll be really, challenging my panelists to give us their views on how, through the lens of a, industry giant like a Maruti, or through the lens of a relatively new economy company like an Apollo 24/7, and everything in the middle, they're attracting talent, great folks like you. How do they plan to develop you? How do they plan to retain you? And what does that mean as they build their businesses, for the next 20 years, 30 years, okay? So it's my privilege to be here. Thank you for having me. And without further ado, let me kick off. And I can't think of a better place to kind of start a discussion around modernization and sustainability than in the renewable energy sector. So Ranjit, let me start with yourself, sir. Today we read about the fact that renewable energy cost on a per unit basis is actually at par or even lower with the so-called traditional energy sources. And this really is a tipping point for us, isn't it? So tell us a little bit about what you see happening in the renewable energy sector in the next few years.
Thanks for this question. This question is super important, especially in today's environment, right, where we are all battling with trying to keep the world within 1.5 degrees centigrade rise and so on and so forth. The good thing that has happened when I started in the renewable energy industry, renewable energy always needed to be pushed to the distribution companies because it was a lot more expensive, whether it was wind or solar or hydro. It was a lot more expensive than buying thermal power, whether it is coal or gas. Over the last 5-7 years, it has changed. So renewable energy, whether it is wind or solar, is a lot cheaper than actually getting power from coal and gas. And that has really changed the dynamics. And all the governments across the world who were earlier wary of renewable energy have shifted to renewable energy in a big way. Mm-hmm. And the good thing is that as the renewable energy prices have dropped, a lot of other use cases which impact other industries and drive decarbonization in sort of the nuts and bolts industry have come to fore. Like a lot of work is being done today and a lot of talk around green hydrogen, green ammonia, synthetic fuels like methanol and ethanol, etc., which are going to come from the ability of the world to be able to produce renewable energy at a ever reducing tariff. And this is something which is very, very important for us, and we will see that we will see an acceleration of renewable energy projects across the world, simply because now renewable energy will go deeper into the older economy.
Fantastic. That's really great news for all of us. And I guess at the core of the modernization of the economy is the modernization of our energy sources. So it's great to hear that not only are we looking at the current sources of renewable energy, but also you're looking at some new technologies coming through. You mentioned green ammonia, green hydrogen, and so on. So Piyush, let me come to you next, if I may. A lot of your clients, and indeed Accenture itself, I'm sure, is driving all kinds of sustainability initiatives. The question really is not if we should do it. I think that ship has sailed. But how are we doing it, and how are we energizing our organizations to really be able to drive this forward here?
Yeah, look, agree, and thank you for that question. The sustainability for us, I think it's a core value issue, right? It's not a an and issue. It's but it's how do we ensure that our businesses, our societies are in a more sustainable position going forward. So, for us, it is ensuring that today all parts of our capabilities are pushing that agenda further for our clients, the customers of our clients, and the societies that they live in. So that's the approach that we are taking, which means that when you look at every aspect of Accenture today, whether you look at from the perspective of our ability to assess customer needs on the front end, understanding how the customer preferences are changing, how and where the customer preferences have to be influenced, because it is a push and a pull thing. We are trying to make sure that our research keeps up with that, right? On the other hand, when you start to look at all the capabilities that we develop today of interacting with our customers, which are backed by data, backed by AI, backed by digital assets, backed by rethinking of business models, right? That they deliver outcomes that again, deliver a much more sustainable society, right? Again, go back further, sustainable supply chains. That is at the heart of trying to recreate a much more sustainable planet, right? So, and then as you mentioned, earlier, coming back to brass tacks of technology, how do we make sure that our technology architectures are green? Right? Because in the rush to consume cloud capabilities, we now need to further re-architect our cloud architecture so that we are making sure that they are green technology and green environmentally friendly architectures, right? So I mean, for us, this is a very pervasive agenda. It is at the heart of all our thinking, not an and thinking, right? And I would urge this younger talent to ensure that as they are thinking about joining the workforce, thinking about coming forward, that they come with that same mindset. This is not an and agenda, this is at the core of the agenda, right? So shun the idea of and, embrace the idea of core, right?
How interesting. Vijendra, let me come to you next. The idea that this is a core agenda. Now, I think you heard sustainable supply chains. You are today running a business where a lot of it is about distribution and getting medicines to people who need them. I mean, at its core, right? And I know that you've, both as a company and as an industry, you've been looking to implement IoT technologies. You've been looking to make more energy efficient and faster deliveries through drones. And there's a whole bunch of digital technologies that you're looking to put in. And I guess in some ways you also have an advantage of being a relatively young company. But the notion of sustainability and how it drives the business forward, and indeed how it shapes the way that you're running the business. Tell us how how you're doing it and what challenges you're seeing here.
Right. So we are a relatively young company, but the back-end supply chain that we have is not young.
Yeah, true.
Right. I think that has, because we want to do this in a way that, the customer wants, faster and more sustainable in all cases. Now, there are a lot of things. Actually, we are starting with basic stuff, first of all, right? The pharma industry typically doesn't even have barcodes, right? Which a lot of other industries have and is really needed for scale stuff, right? So we're starting there. But then you also have, more sci-fi stuff coming in. But I think for us, it's start at the basics and then, go from there, right? That is very important.
So it's a gradual journey for you.
Yes.
Interesting. Let me maybe shift the discussion to Mr. Kalsi. I think amongst all the folks sitting, on this, you probably have the most complex business, dare I say, and definitely Maruti is a household name. Equally, the auto sector is probably more disrupted than most with the advent of electric mobility. And I know that some of your peers and yourselves are also experimenting with green hydrogen now as a possible fuel. What's it been like, Maruti, this whole sustainability agenda? And when you're sitting in the boardroom in the senior leadership meetings, what are the discussions like? Do share with us here.
If we talk about, say, electric mobility, let me say that, the movement is happening, but it's happening at a slow pace because whole set of, other associated areas are involved with it, like our, say, charging infrastructure, our availability of the, say, battery at the affordable prices, and subsequently the whole ecosystem has to be developed in line with that, how we are going to recycle or discard those batteries. So all those challenges are there with the EV as of now. But certainly as a company, we are committed towards, say, sustainability, clean environment, and decarbonization. So our approach is that it should be a sort of technology agnostic approach towards decarbonization. So there are multiple routes towards that. One being, say, EV. And EV, again, we cannot jump directly to, say, 100% say, electric vehicles. There is a route which, developing country like ours has to go through that. Say, first in that direction is, say, smart hybrid. And then there is a strong hybrid route. And then we move towards total electric vehicles. So these two bridges, we have to, first of all see how they evaluate and how, sort of, say, mass productionization of lithium-ion battery starts happening as we follow this route. And with the passage of time, as the volumes go up, the costs also we expect that will come down. But at the same time, there are other fuel options like CNG. Today, most of our models are with CNG, which is a very, very clean fuel. Apart from that, we are working on different other biogas options. And certainly, it's a evolutionary journey. Now, fuels like, say, ethanol, that mix is, available, and our engines are compatible with that. So it's a whole lot of different technologies that we have to use simultaneously towards decarbonization. And, this is one aspect about the vehicle. Then similarly, we have to think of the vehicle manufacturing activity also. So at our plant level, we follow a concept of 3R, which is reduce, reuse, and recycle. So that's how we ensure that we, leave lowest possible, say, carbon footprint as we produce the vehicles. Likewise, in rest of our ecosystem, say our dealerships, we are creating green buildings there so that daytime air conditioning is taken care of through the electricity generated by solar panels. We need not even store this electricity because at night the dealerships don't work. So that's a much cheaper way to use solar energy without using the, say, storage equipment for that. Likewise, at Maruti, we have a, this thing, now solar power generation system, which generates a few megawatts of energy. And so I would like to say that it's a whole ecosystem that we are concentrating and focusing upon. And then the vehicle end of life cycle, that is another important area. And we are setting up the plants across the country where we will be dismantling the vehicles in a very eco-friendly way, because there is a, say, battery which is to be discarded. There are air conditioning gases which are, evolved. There are some other, say, pollutants which come out as we discard the vehicle, rubbers, plastics. So all this has to be eco-friendly. So in a way, we are taking a holistic approach towards sustainability as far as,
So I think
Maruti is
just
concerned.
echoing what I think Piyush said earlier, it's very clear that sustainability is at the core of the thinking at Maruti. And surely, as one of the key partners, in the automotive ecosystem, Satish, Apollo is also, I know, doing a lot of work around decarbonization of supply chains, I think recycling of tires wherever possible, etc. Tell us a little bit about, from your lens in the auto space and at a broader level, what is the sustainability agenda looking like? And how is it driving the whole modernization conversation at Apollo Tyres?
I do concur that what Piyush said, and you reinforced that sustainability is absolutely at the core of any company's agenda today, whether it's at the board level or at the management level, or even at there are enough forces driving it. The COP26 has given it a orbital shift. There are a lot of regulations today which are also driving organizations. For example, in the tire industry, there's something called as extended producer responsibility to formulate a circular economy for tires. Once the usage is over, how the tires are going to be collected and then going to get into, similarly like what Mr. Kalsi said, how it's going to be stripped into its various components, and a lot of it can be reused and recycled into various industries. So at Apollo, we were early starters. Even when the GRI indicators were there, we had started. Today, the top 1,000 companies have to come out with the BRSR report, so it's getting measured. Whatever gets measured gets improved finally. So where we are today is that we have a firm roadmap around all the scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 as mandated. And now around all these roadmaps, the real work has got started in real earnest. So target setting is the first, I would say, which it's clear to the company where do we want to be at 2026, which is incidentally our vision period, the 5-year vision period, and then 2030, 2050. So we have aligned ourselves with the rest of the government, with the rest of the industry peers. Also, companies like Maruti and other customers are also driving their vendors into procuring greener material and greener tires, etc. And in case of auto industry, it's actually the OEMs which do push the chain very magnificently in all the leaps, all the industrial revolutions that have happened, and much of the manufacturing management comes from the OEMs. So all of us are working in tandem, in alignment with this. Just on the bit of modernization, I would say, modernization is again at the core of how you are going to be achieving those targets. So machines are well connected. Data, we say, is the new oil, but then all the governance around this big asset, how do you use it? How do you decode it and make gains in the same things which you were doing traditionally with traditional tools? So some of those things are there. And like Mr. Kalsi mentioned, it's an end-to-end thing. It's not starting at the shop floor. It's starting with your procurement cycle and ending with the consumer, and then the circular economy shaping up. So early days, evolutionary, but I think it's going to leap forward every year on year as we learn and as we make changes to our knowledge and go in achieving our targets.
Possibly accelerate as we go forward as well.
Correct, absolutely.
So, Sanjay, let me get you to maybe wrap up this section. You've heard a variety of views. I think it's fair to say that sustainability is not point number 6 on the agenda anymore. It's across every point of the agenda. And organizations are challenging themselves and implementing sustainability as a core wraparound in their modernization initiatives as they look to think about the future. You have probably the best view of us all as you work with multiple clients across the world. How are you folks helping clients drive the whole sustainability and modernization agendas? Do tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Like you rightly said, I guess sustainability is not something which is not a key business objective for businesses today. In fact, we've got a saying which is, in this decade, every business will be a sustainable business. And we used to say in the last decade, every business will be a digital business. In this decade, it is about sustainability. And if a business has to be sustainable, you've got to look at it for the total enterprise, not just one area of the enterprise. So it's a concept of total enterprise reinvention, yeah? And you've got to build sustainability into everything you do. So the way we are helping our clients is very often we're helping them think through what should be their strategy for sustainability. So there's a thinking piece that needs to be done up front. But it's not just that. That will just tell you how to get to net zero. But then you've got to dive into each piece of your business across the value chain and say, what am I going to do for responsible sourcing? So, we heard from the automotive sector what they're doing from a responsible sourcing standpoint. But even from the customer standpoint, you've got to understand what the customer needs and then plan for a circular economy on that particular basis. So the two thoughts I would leave this group with is, every business will be a sustainable business, and you've got to look at it end to end. And finally, like was observed earlier, what gets measured gets done. Therefore, ESG measurements are very important. And therefore, every corporation needs to have mechanisms to measure what they're doing as far as ESG is
absolutely,
concerned.
absolutely. And I think it's a welcome sort of step taken by governments around the world to really bring it alive and bring it to the agendas of the boardrooms, so completely. And I think the other huge agenda item which has been on every senior leadership and boardroom agenda is that of how do we make our company or our organization ever more customer-centric, right? Which is not to say 30 years ago companies weren't customer-centric, but as new technologies pervade, as new ways of thinking pervade, as all of us demand different things from the companies that we engage with, companies have to keep adjusting, keep evolving, in some ways keep revolutionizing. And one of the things that we are seeing emerging now is a technology disruption, which broadly we call the metaverse, right? And it's at its earliest days, but the way I personally characterize it, for those, none of you guys are old enough, but all of us are, so there was what we called Web 1, where it was a bunch of really ugly HTML pages. Then there was Web 2, dominated by social interactions, but all two-dimensional. And Web 3 is about three-dimensional social interactions. And a big kind of an umbrella term for that is the metaverse. But just like in Web 2, we didn't spend 24 hours on social media. Some of us might do, but not most of us. Similarly, in Web 3, none of us is going to be 24 hours into a metaverse. So the right way to look at it is, how does the physical and the digital world coexist? And the term that we use is multiverse, okay? And one of the things that is going to challenge all senior leadership in every organization is, as you folks become more and more important as customers, the next generation coming through and the generation after you, how do we reorient ourselves to become customer-centric in this new reality? With this new set of customers, with your new preferences, with sustainability at the core, and all the new technology which is making all of this possible. So let me now invert the discussion. Maybe I'll come back. I started with the new economy last time. Let me start with the industrial giants. I will not use the term old economy, so if that's okay. I hate it. But Satish, let me come back to you. Apollo Tyres has been investing a lot of resource in really creating a connected digital enterprise. It's an end-to-end vision. I know it's been driven right from the top for years. Tell us a little bit about what that experience is like. And as you think about your next set of customers, many of whom are sitting in this room, what's going to change for them?
Hopefully, they'll be more engaged with our product to start with. The industry has been fighting from its inception. But nobody really cares about tires, unless they go flat or otherwise. So that's a losing battle. I hope with the new technologies we get their attention. But yeah, on a more serious note, there's incremental improvement. Obviously, a lot of things are improving organically. But if I was to sum it up, my understanding of the multiverse, as you mentioned, with the host of technologies available, and it's all about the art of possible now. What is really, so you have to reimagine your organization in a way. That's the task in front of the managements today, and there's enough out there which is scaring the hell out of you that if you don't do that fast, you're going to be disrupted out of your business. So that being said, my understanding of this subject is that improve your processes, make them frictionless, so that the consumer experiences that frictionless and gets wowed by your processes and by your brands, and hopefully then acknowledges and gives you a higher share than your competitor. So that's one piece of my understanding. The other and the bigger piece is that business models new business models will take birth, and they will take birth, and they will go through their life cycle. We are experimenting with some of them, some with the help of Accenture even. So that's the other area of disruption. So just to give you a peep into what we are thinking is, can you get tires on, let's say, subscription basis? Can you pay per kilometer? And if you're not using your asset, then why should it be a asset which is not put to use? So how do we increase our productivity? How do we? It's a product which is in touch with the road surface and with the vehicle, so it has the potential to bring in so much of data and make so many use cases out of that in your business. That's the crystal ball gazing which is happening. So broadly, I'll rest by saying frictionless processes on one hand, and the second is new business models. To me, these are the two biggest.
How interesting.
Yeah.
And you started by saying that there's been a challenge in the past with how to engage customers. I think if I were to come to Mr. Kalsi, that's not a problem that car manufacturers face. I think possibly for everyone in the room, maybe aside from buying a home, a car purchase is probably the largest or second largest ever purchase. Highly engaged, people do a lot of research. And I know Maruti's been, kind of implementing virtual test drives, 3D kind of, car simulations and so on and so forth. But what I'd really want to get your thoughts on, sir, when you look out over the next 10, 20 years, with the advent of the multiverse on one side, but at the same time, with the car dealership still very much there on Mathura Road, what's the hybrid world looking like? How do you allocate resources? How do you kind of invest in terms of where you see the customer ending up? What's the journey like? Over to you, sir.
Well, you rightly mentioned that car is a high engagement product. Now, having said that, our customer is evolving at a pace which is, much faster than, one can actually, one would have actually envisaged it. And, during the COVID time, the whole thing got accelerated. It started, moving at an exponential pace. So we, work towards creating a sort of, convenience for the customer in the sense that customer is becoming digitally savvy. So we analyze that there are about 28 different steps which are involved in the purchase of a vehicle, and we have digitized all those steps. So unless a customer wants to go through the final stage of having a touch and feel, with a car, he can today get a car sitting at home without even stepping out from the comfort of his house. We have created a finance platform, which was one of the most difficult steps to be addressed to. And today he can get finance sitting right from the comfort of his home. He can load certain documents which are required from the banks. And we have about 20 odd banks which are integrated with that platform. He can accessorize his vehicle from the comfort of his drawing room and sort of, partly design his vehicle from that perspective, what color of seat covers. He can fit it digitally on his laptop and see how the vehicle will look like, body graphics, alloy wheels and many other such accessories. So accessorization he can do sitting at home. So that's how we are working towards it. And I'm glad to share here with you that our latest launch, Grand Vitara, we have introduced a sort of metaverse experience for the customer, where he can have the entire experience of the vehicle in the metaverse. And also customers are doing the bookings through metaverse for this particular model. Our Nexa experience is a totally digital experience today, which is being extended to Arena as well. Another thing we did was hyper-local experience for the customer, where we blended online and offline experience. Now, if somebody has done some research at home, He has a zero down on a particular model, particular variant, particular color, and he books an appointment with the dealership for the final part of his journey of vehicle purchase. Then the dealer executive will know exactly that what is it that he has zero down on. And he starts from there, explaining it to him, giving him say touch and feel experience of the vehicle. So this is the way we are.
So personalization, entire product experience,
Yes.
the whole journey is mapped. It's quite incredible, and well done to you. Piyush, you want to chime in?
And I think the key thing here is if you look at this multiverse experience and modernization, they have to go hand in hand, right?
Yeah.
As Mr. Kalsi alluded to, right? Because number one is when you're operating in these multiverses, we cannot predict where the customer preferences will land. I mean, let's face it, Web 2.0, nobody expected that the biggest use case will be maps. As, maps and mobility became the biggest use case of Web 2.0, and the Web 3.0 use cases that are out there today, we are unlikely to be the ones that will really prove to be the most prominent. Which means that the organizations have to be modern enough to be able to respond to those changes very, very rapidly, as well as to be able to study those changes. I mean, again, I'm going back to the car industry, and I think to be not accused of plagiarism, I think this was mentioned by the president of Lincoln on the sidelines of the Detroit Motor Show recently as well, after when the whole autonomous mobility, advent started, there was a general sense that all automobiles will start looking similar. They'll all be rounded but that's not happening at all. The individual emotional identity and association to the automobile and identity is carrying on, and it's likely to carry on and therefore, if you started to take your organizational design in one direction, you'll have to switch that very quickly, and these are very deep switches. These are not minor tweaks. So that's where modernization of enterprise in terms of becoming far more agile organizations, is as critical as understanding this multiverse. Right?
Wow, the digital future is finally here. But is it here in the healthcare space? Vijendra, one of the things that, a lot of people and personal experience as well, the various players in the healthcare ecosystem, primary health versus hospitals, pharmacies, it seems to me that there's still a lot of scope to make it frictionless, make the patient experience better. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think, again, I will say we have to start with the basics. In healthcare, one of the things that we are doing is what we call continuum of care, which is basically to try and make you, healthier or look after your health even when you are at home. Right, and an example would be that Friday mornings I have these conference call with our promoters, like now 9:30. One Friday morning I was not feeling well around 9, so ideally I would, if it was beforehand, like more than a couple of years ago, I would have just ignored it and sat through the call, right? But in this case, I talked to a doctor at 9 o'clock, had the prescription at 9:15. Could order medicines, from our app, delivers in 2 hours roughly. So by the end of the call, I had the medicines. Home collection of tests was also booked at 11:30. They took my blood. By the evening, I had the report on my app, sent it to the doctor. He said, all's fine, just do the course of medicines. So that's, I think, one of the use cases that, we see. And this is about having the end-to-end experience, not doing, something, an interesting term which was being used earlier is lipstick on a pig, right? There was a lot of just front-ending which was being changed. You put a nice website, but everything else, behind it was still very, very manual and not so great. So now we are trying to build a full end-to-end process and make sure that customers are, they're not having to go to a doctor, to the clinic unless it is required, right? Yeah. So it's not that it's not required. It will exist, but the first step is you talk to a doctor. If it is required, then you go in person, things like
No,
that.
absolutely. Even in that context, I mean, just it's fresh in my mind. Just a couple of days ago, we spoke with a startup called Voice OC or Voice OC, and what they do is, this whole appointment setting process, booking a test, MRI, X-ray. They've actually built some WhatsApp integrators, so you can do the whole thing. And I actually tried it; it was quite wonderful, where you can book an MRI, for example, just from your WhatsApp, and you don't need any human interface or holding times on a call center or anything like that. So exciting things are happening. And no doubt, as you folks have heard,
The lipstick and the pig of Web 2.0, 3.0 was core modernization of Web 1. Right? Because
So
I have lived through the life cycle where the ability to submit a form via the internet, which got printed in a back office for a person to look at, was seen as deep modernization.
No.
This generation will not even understand what that means, right?
I still remember when I used to have fights with CIOs who were looking to do their proprietary e-commerce channels from their own data center. Because if I put everything on the cloud, what will happen to my data? I think that ship mercifully has sailed. Otherwise, the whole digital economy would have just fallen flat here. But let me turn to, I guess, and this is probably most important for you guys in the audience. All of this exciting stuff, from connected healthcare to the car buying experience going completely metaverse. By the way, I love the Grand Vitara. And I shall go and experience the metaverse because there is a Nexa dealership very close to where I live.
You can only experience it in the metaverse. He sold it out for 3 years now, so you can't experience it in physical.
Oh, fantastic. But, all of this demands bright, young brains like you folks, right? So I'm going to turn to my panel, and I'm going to ask them, and you should listen up, right? What are they going to do to attract you guys to their organizations, and why you shouldn't join an exciting new venture capital fund, but instead go to them. Okay, and nobody on this platform has more people spread all over the world with more cultures and more nationalities than Accenture. So Sanjay, you haven't spoken for a while. Why don't I come to you? Tell us a little bit. You are a leader in the firm. You have a global role. How is Accenture attracting the best of talent? How are you retaining and upskilling talent? And what are the challenges that you see when it comes to engaging with the next generation of talent? Over to you, sir.
Just before I start there, I think on the previous point, on the metaverse, opportunities will keep coming. And we found an opportunity in order to actually bring a lot of our talent on board in the metaverse. And so we've got a metaverse platform called the Nth Flow, and we actually do the onboarding of our new joiners in the metaverse. So just a piece of trivia for the audience because it's very relevant in their context. Okay, coming to the question about attracting talent, I think this is going to be one of the biggest challenges for not just professional services companies, but I think for industry at large. Speaking for us, in particular, we bank on campuses to a very large extent. Close to about 1/3 of our total talent comes in from campuses. This includes MBA schools, it includes grad schools, engineering schools.
1/3?
1/3, okay. Yeah. Now, the talent coming in MBAs is fine, but if you're bringing in graduate students, you're bringing in technology graduates, you need to upskill them. And therefore, what we do is we run consulting boot camps in order to make the talent coming in from campus ready to be able to consult for our clients. So there's a huge investment that needs to be made in upskilling the talent. We, of course, recruit from industry, we recruit from competition. But in this environment, what you also need to do is, we've been in this country now for over 30 years. So we've got a huge alumni pool. So we bank on the alumni pool to bring them back. That's a huge opportunity. We rely on employee referrals to bring in people that our employees know. But most of all, I think the key challenge is still there in terms of availability of adequately skilled people. And for that, I think what we have to do going forward, and we've started pilots, is how do we tie up with educational institutes to actually customize the curriculum so that when the talent is coming to us, they are already equipped.
So you're going even deeper into the
Yes,
talent supply chain.
it's called backward integration.
Great news
right?
for all of you guys. Right?
So we are backward integrating into the educational institutes to really make sure that the talent coming in is as ready as possible.
Okay.
So tough environment, but you got to innovate.
Sure.
You got to modernize your own processes in order to make sure that you can deliver. So
Ranjit, not a lot of people recognize just how much technology goes into a renewable energy company. And what I mean by that is that you folks rely on data flows as much as any digital company would, right? And analytics, the use of technology is at the core, and dare I say will become increasingly important as we go forward. You heard, what Accenture is doing to really manage the whole talent lifecycle more effectively going forward. When you think of it from the lens of your company and your industry, tell us a little bit about how you're thinking about attracting these wonderful people to your company, and why should they be excited to join a renewable energy company?
Well, this is a very important thing because traditionally it's been very difficult to attract talent to a utility sector, right? And largely in India, especially, the utility sector was state-driven. So there has been over the last decade, last 10, 15 years, there has been a sea change in how the industry has evolved. And now you have larger companies that are private sector. And as the projects on the renewable energy side have become larger and more complex, they're improving performance, they've become super competitive. So therefore, data and just the digitalization of the entire value chain from right from the time when you're siting a project to the time when you're operating a project has become very, very important, right? And we are finding that more and more it's becoming very, very important for us to be able to attract the best talent. The good thing is that because of the fact that our business at its core is a sustainable business, we find that younger people, the younger talent, is very interested in working in these companies like mine and companies like ours in this sector. So we are seeing a lot of folks who approach and say that, look, they want to be part of a company that works in sustainability, that has sustainability at its core, that is looking to build renewable energy projects or renewable energy companies or renewable energy businesses, and that has really helped us attract talent. And when they see the value prop at our end, that yes, it's not that they will be doing something which is not high tech, right? So it's become a very important piece that the fact that we are doing high tech stuff, but then high tech stuff is being done by most other companies also. But the fact that we are marrying the high tech stuff with sustainability at its core, with green at its core, and this is something which is most relevant, and I would say the youth of today is most aware about what the challenges facing us are. So thankfully we are finding that we are able to attract talent more and more in our companies.
I can tell you, when you said no that we are an attractive sector, there's a lot of nodding heads in the audience, right?
If I may, I guess when we go to campuses, one of the key questions we get is, what are we doing to make this a better world? So completely resonate with what.
No, by the way, and I think this is useful for you folks as well. As personally, I'm raising a fund at the moment as part of the IN platform. One of the key questions which comes especially from the international institutions is, tell us, how are you going to align with the UN SDGs? Tell us how you're supporting clean tech companies. Tell us what is your view in terms of sustainability across all of your investments. So echoing what was at the start of this discussion, that sustainable thinking is at the core of business going forward, right? And there's no two ways about that. And I think it's across all dimensions, so completely agree with you. Very quickly, so we're just coming to the, to the last couple of minutes. So I'm going to skip a couple and maybe come to you, Vijayendra. I know you have a slightly more, dare I say, radical view when it comes to, the whole notion of talent. I'm not going to queue it up. Why don't you tell us what your thoughts are?
So I will start with saying all is fair in the war for talent, right? I think for us, so in slightly less than 3 years, we've grown to like 900 people or so. Basically, we see it as a core function for us running the company, right? It's not, at least at the starting, when you're starting a startup, it's not an HR function, it's not somebody else's job, right? I personally used to spend at least 50% of my time just hiring people, right? And the pitch was very simply, पैसे मिलेंगे, साथ में पुण्य भी मिलेगा, because we are in the business of saving lives, right? Like, you know, there are people who have this notion that startups are a little bit unstable, all that, right? So you have to go through a lot of things, right? I know startup founders who actually talk to like the parents and the in-laws of the candidate to assure them that this is a good job and they should not discourage them from saying, "Arey Tata nahi hai ye company ka naam kabhi suna nahi hai," right? That
no,
kind
it's
of
a very real issue. Yeah.
So
it's a challenge that we have to overcome. I completely.
So
agree.
I think for us it's a very, very core thing, and as management we spend a lot of time personally trying to first identify the right talent, because in the thing of hiring fast, you don't want one wrong hire sort of, especially at a senior level, can undo lots of good work. So identify the right talent and then convince them to join, and money and all is like, anyway, startups are infamous for.
Super. All's fair in the war for talent. Folks, let me just give you a few thoughts.
Yeah. Look, I think if there is anything more disrupted than everything else, it is the whole talent supply chain. Right? I mean, I think you've heard some of the very radical views on this table. I make no mistake. I mean, the way we were working 2 years back is not the way we're working today, is definitely not going back to 2 years, and will be quite different from today as well, right? So the human interaction model at work has drastically been changed and is likely to go on changing. That's part one. The second, as a result, the second thing that has happened is the digitization of society means sourcing and availability of talent is getting democratized. Today, I can get on LinkedIn, I'm accessed on LinkedIn by people that yesterday were the sole privileges of a high-quality business school. Today, I'm much more accessible, so therefore quality talent from anywhere can reach out and get sourced, which is a big challenge to what you bring to the table, because you got to bring that radical thinking that individual can as well, right? So the idea of the education model is to ensure now that they are able to challenge the thinking, not put the discipline of thinking and ways of working, because because that will not get us as far as we want you all to take us, right? So that's the second aspect. It is democratized access to talent. The first aspect is new ways, it's completely radicalized ways of working, which means, coming to the third point, which has again been highlighted already, just to paraphrase it, is that the purpose of employment is going to be critical to keep talent on board, right? If we do not have a very clear defined purpose as to why we are staying in business, why we are employing people, we are unlikely to keep people. Right? So I think those are the three critical factors that will help us navigate through this highly disrupted part of our business. This is the core of our business, and this is the most disrupted part of our business.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely. I'm just conscious we are completely out of time. So just to quickly recap, we went through some very, very, I think, deep discussions around how, I think there's a consensus, dare I say, talking on behalf of my panelists, that sustainability is at the core of business. As we look to modernize the whole business sector, modernize the economy, sustainability is at the core of thinking. Without sustainability, there's no modernization. The second thing that we really touched upon was how all of us, are demanding ever more from the businesses that we engage with as customers, as stakeholders, as employees, and how technology triggers, such as the metaverse, are really unlocking new paradigms of engagement, enabling new customer experiences. You heard about how Maruti's kind of created a whole virtual sales channel, product experiences, and so on. You also heard about, how the healthcare ecosystem is evolving and all the wonderful things that Accenture is doing to really make themselves the most attractive sort of company for all of you folks, right? Equally, certain sectors, such as renewable energy, so important for all of us as we go forward. Mercifully, I should say, becoming attractive as an employment destination for you guys. While I look forward, sir, to seeing how I can pay for a per kilometer use for my tires. It's a very interesting thought process. So innovation is coming from everywhere. And all of this innovation, all of this technology, all of this sustainability thinking is going to be driven by you folks. So thank you very, very much for being a wonderful audience. Big hand for my panel, please. Thank you very much, folks. You guys are wonderful panelists. Thank you.